Now in a football match there comes a time for a player to take over. He enters the doors of the zone and every action taken in the 90 minutes is handcrafted by those above. A spirit unleashing its wrath on the opposition, sending them into a trance. These are what I like to call 10 out of 10 performances. But what accounts for a 10 out of 10 performance? Well, to put it simply, it's the stage they danced on, the opposition they came up against, and of course, the outcome of the game. And throughout footballing history, there have been many of these 10 out of 10 performances that we have been able to witness. So first off, let's go back to 2011, where Barcelona and Man United faced off in the Champions League final. And in this final, an Argentinian Smurf decided to take over. Wembley Stadium was the theatre of this epic showdown. Manchester United, the defending champions, pitted against Barcelona, the reigning La Liga champions. And the stakes were sky high for this clash of titans. Ahead of the game, newspapers were talking about how Messi was going to seal United's fate, and of course, he stepped up to the occasion. And although Wayne Rooney would score an equaliser 10 minutes later, Man United's fates were actually sealed. Because throughout the game, Messi pulled off a masterclass in ball movement and control, having 83 touches in the game whilst creating multiple opportunities, and of course, that second goal actually being the highlight of this performance. Messi found himself at the edge of the area with space in front of him. With calm precision, he then slotted the ball into the bottom corner of the goal, doubling Barcelona's lead. But honestly, the match was encapsulated by Messi's performance and his ability to not only score but orchestrate play. And of course he was named the man of the match with 8 shots and 2 goals in the game. Next up, in a twist to the usual script, we have to talk about a Tottenham player.
Smithies, are they booing me?
A guy that seems to go under the radar when we talk about the Tottenham Pochettino era. In 2019, Lucas Moura single-handedly led Tottenham to a Champions League final. It was Tottenham against Ajax in the semi-final of the Champions League, and Ajax had already secured a first leg victory at Tottenham's home ground. So essentially, these Tottenham players needed to pull off a comeback, and all eyes were on who could spark a turnaround. And from the kickoff, it was Lucas Moura who showed his intent. His pace and dribbling were causing problems for this Ajax defence. But of course, Spurs will be Spurs, conceding 2 quick goals to Ajax. The aggregate score now favoured Ajax, and Tottenham fans had lost belief. But when all was seemingly lost, one bald fraud turned up to the occasion. In the 55th minute, Lucas Moura scored his first goal with a sharp finish after a powerful run, turning the match on its bald head. Then in the 59th minute, he completed a breathtaking solo run, evading defenders before composing himself and finishing off. This brought Tottenham to 2-2 on the night, but they were still 1-0 down on aggregate, with 3-2 being the score. They needed one more goal. Time seemed like it was slowing down for Ajax, and Spurs were about to scrunch up this UEFA script and throw it in the bin. Because in the dying embers of the game, Lucas Moura completed his hat-trick, sealing a 3-2 victory. Tottenham of course winning on away goals, a rule that has now been abolished in the UEFA Champions League. Lucas Moura's 96th minute winner and hat-trick on the night was historic, sending Tottenham into a Champions League final against Liverpool. And of course it wouldn't be the fairy tale ending for Spurs fans, but you can't lie, that is a historic game that will go down as one of the best games in Champions League history. And Lucas Moura didn't score many goals for Tottenham during his time there, but he sure did score some important ones for the club. Now I might have to issue an apology to Man United fans after this video drops, mainly because the next performance I'm going to talk about is against you guys again. But it's one that we just have to talk about, featuring one of my favourite players of all time, Ricardo Kaká. Bearer of the number 22, one of the greatest attacking midfielders of all time, in 2007 he showed the world that he was the real deal. It was Man United versus AC Milan in the Champions League, and from the kickoff Kaká's class instantly flourished, with flicks and tricks playing it about in this midfield diamond. And then in the 11th minute, Kaká made his presence felt throughout the entire stadium. After being played in behind by Clarence Seedorf, he finished off with his left foot into the far right corner with ease. And throughout the match you could just see this blossoming of confidence that Kaká represented, completing 6 of the 7 dribbles he attempted. It seemed like he was playing at a different pace to everyone else, like he'd been given the star in Mario or a Monster Energy drink. And as the first half was coming to a close, Kaká delivered a moment of brilliance that to this day is still impossible to recreate fully. Following a long goal kick by Dida, Kaká outmuscled Darren Fletcher in the air before flicking the ball over the head of Gabriel Heinz. Heinz then attempted to get the ball back along with Patrice Evra in a joint attempt to sandwich Kaká, but no, Kaká was on a different planet during this era and could not be stopped that easily. In a split-second decision, Kaká headed the ball to the ground, avoiding both of the defenders, who then collided into each other, leaving Kaká with a 1v1 scenario. And you could have bet your life savings that Kaká was going to place this into the bottom corner. And of course he did, simply slotting the ball past Edwin van der Sar. This entire sequence of events encapsulates his dominance on football during this time, making an impossible 4v1 situation seem possible. Kaká's 2 goals were pivotal in overturning this aggregate score to 5-3, and of course securing a place in the Champions League final. Kaká's performance in this semi-final was a defining moment in his career. He scored 10 goals in the Champions League that season, finishing as the tournament's top goal scorer as a central attacking midfielder. These achievements then earning him the likes of the Ballon d'Or and FIFA World Player of the Year. And despite many other amazing performances throughout his illustrious career, I think this one at Old Trafford against Man United seemingly sums it up. Now following that performance is going to be hard, but for me, in the midst of the noise about outfield players having 10 out of 10 performances, lies one man, a goalkeeper who wrote himself in history with a magnificent Champions League final display, helping his side Real Madrid secure a 14th Champions League title. In the 2022 Champions League final, all eyes were set on Liverpool and Real Madrid, a clash between 2 of Europe's most successful clubs. But it was one man that stood out on the night: Thibaut Courtois. From the opening whistle, this Liverpool side pressed high, looking to test Courtois from early. As Liverpool intensified their search for an equaliser after Vinicius Jr.'s opening goal, Courtois made crucial save after crucial save against the likes of Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane. His positioning on the night, reflexes and just awareness put him above everyone else on this pitch, and it was a goalkeeper. Mohamed Salah was peppering this goal all game, 1v1 against Courtois, but no, Courtois had the better of him each and every time, honestly saving this Real Madrid side. Because if it wasn't for him between the sticks, the score would have been a lot different. Courtois made 9 saves in that Champions League final, the most in Champions League final history since Opta started collecting data, with 6 of those saves coming from inside of the box. Following the conclusion, Courtois was rightly named the man of the match. His composure under immense pressure helping Real Madrid actually win their 14th Champions League title. And in my opinion, as someone who overlooks the brilliance of goalkeepers, it was definitely a 10 out of 10 performance.
During a Bundesliga game back in 2015 between Bayern Munich and Wolfsburg, Lewandowski said, "You know what, I'm taking over this game and you can't do anything about it." Now the scene had been set with Wolfsburg stunning Bayern Munich, scoring a goal in the first half. And this had the doubters doubting, with Pep Guardiola looking like a fraud. Bayern Munich fans were seeing their bald-headed manager with his hands on his head. And with all this firepower in their starting lineup, they still couldn't manage to break down Wolfsburg. But at half-time, Pep Guardiola made one of the best managerial decisions in his entire career. He brought on a world-class striker. What is this? Ultimate Team. Robert Lewandowski came onto the pitch in that second half. And what followed was a spectacle that defied belief. This guy came onto the pitch and within 9 minutes and 9 touches scored 5 goals. Some people don't even have that many goals in their entire footballing career. Yep, Lewandowski scored that in 9 minutes. A goal in the 51st, a goal in the 52nd, a goal in the 55th, a goal in the 57th, and a goal in the 60th. This is like when you're playing FIFA and you just give the controller pad to your older brother and say, "Please save me, I'm losing 2-0. 10 out of 10. Now another performance that involved a bald-headed man, we have to talk about Zidane versus Brazil in the 2006 World Cup. Going into this game, Zidane had already been impactful during the tournament with an amazing performance against Spain, with that finish when he cut in from the left hand side and put it underneath the legs of Casillas that really comes to mind. But again, walking into this quarter-final, this was a different beast that Zidane and his French army had to take on. A beast that was filled with Brazilian ballers from the favelas. R9, Roberto Carlos, Kaká, Ronaldinho, Cafu. How many players were in this team? Even the midfield that was structured in this game to break down Zidane, the likes of Gilberto Silva and Zé Roberto. But within the first 10 seconds of the game, Zidane had already been dancing through this midfield. Zidane was so influential during this 90 minutes against Brazil, with 103 touches and 92% pass accuracy. It was like the Brazilian players were being schooled by a Frenchman in their own game. And this wasn't a spring chicken Zidane. Zidane really came out of retirement and decided to put on a symphony for Brazil, absolutely dancing around them for 90 minutes. You saw touches, flicks and tricks throughout the entire game, and he just oozed this elegance on the ball, completing 3 key passes in the game and a pinpoint free kick that picked out who else but Thierry Henry, who won the game. He executed 7 completed dribbles in the game and really controlled and dictated the midfield. Of course, France would go on to win the tie against Brazil thanks to this amazing 10 out of 10 performance, and then Zidane would again be influential against the likes of Portugal and Italy in the final, where his influence would actually get the better of him with, him missing out, getting that red card, and all these moments happening in that match.
Subscribe.
Now, while this next player was mentioned in the performance that I just spoke about, Ronaldinho had one of his own 10 out of 10 performances in the 2005/2006 La Liga season. It was November of 2005 and Barcelona were coming up against Real Madrid at the Bernabéu. And this was El Clasico in an essence, because just look at these two starting 11s, the likes of Roberto Carlos, Beckham, Zidane, Ronaldo coming up against Eto'o, a young Messi, Ronaldinho, Deco. These two squads had the future and the past within them. From the bench all the way to the starting 11, from the screen to the pen to the ring to the king. The Bernabéu was an absolute fortress during this time, but Barcelona and Ronaldinho came to disrespect that entire squad. And from the kickoff of this game, you saw the influence of Ronaldinho. Every time he got the ball, the stands rose in anticipation. He was the forefront of most of the attacks, and even though Eto'o put Barcelona up, it was Ronaldinho who sealed the deal on the night. There was touches, flicks and tricks that Ronaldinho just displayed. It was almost as if he was not playing Real Madrid. He was playing just an amateur side. That's what it looked like from the outside looking in. And Ronaldinho would be threatening throughout the game, but his time would eventually come where he would score his first goal on the night. He made that left flank of the Bernabéu absolutely light on fire for that first goal, where don't represent. And from that point, he was just showing out and showing off, because it was almost like he said, you know what, I like that goal so much, I'ma do it again. And he did just that, tormenting and abusing Sergio Ramos on the left flank before finishing off tidily again. He was unstoppable in this game, and that second goal received this. This was like the master showing his disciple what he could become. Now, from some all-time world-class players to a guy that once had a spell playing for Southampton. Now, during the 2018/19 season, Ajax were on a phenomenal run of form. A run of form that saw them go all the way to the semi-finals of the Champions League. But I think this side that was managed by Erik ten Hag's bald-headed self was orchestrated perfectly by Tadic. Dusan Tadic had found himself in this Ajax squad and was pivotal to a lot of their success during this season. And it was in the round of 16 against Real Madrid where this squad started to turn heads. Now, after the first leg in the tie, Ajax were trailing 2-1 down to Real Madrid, with the second leg being hosted at the Santiago Bernabéu. And if there was one person that ate their Weetabix on the day of the game, it was Dusan Tadic, because this performance that he was about to put up would be rated 10 out of 10 by L'Equipe, a French publication that critically analyzes performances of players, with not many players receiving an official 10 out of 10 rating. But if you want to be rated fairly, then obviously put the performances of the 10 out of 10s in the Jib Rules comments, and I will rate you 10 out of 10. Mini Minter, 10 out of 10 in the Sidemen charity game back in 2020. So the scene was set at the Bernabéu, and this Ajax side came to town and came to play about with this squad. Now, during this time, Real Madrid were going through a transitional period, losing the likes of Zidane and of course Cristiano Ronaldo. But even without these two, the odds were stacked in their favour, because look at the squad. Just look at the squad. As soon as this game kicked off, you saw the power scale of this Ajax side just increase. Like Erik ten Hag had just put +10 overall on all of his players. But this ain't FIFA. The main reason that Ajax were playing so good in this game was heavily due to the impact of Dusan Tadic. Now, Tadic decided to morph into Zinedine Zidane during this game. Something like Ben 10. pressing the watch and said, you know what? Zidane. Because from the off, he was influential in the game, you know, picking up the ball from the halfway line, driving with it, absolutely rouletted the hell out of Casemiro, sent this guy doing the spinneroonie Booker T style into a different direction. Then he threads a ball to, I think it was David Neres, who chips it over Thibaut Courtois. And then still he's relentless, creating chances during this game. In before saying, you know what, I don't want just an assist, I want a goal too. Receiving the ball, putting it top corner and leaving again Thibaut Courtois looking into the corner like a madman. And then of course in the game he got another assist with a perfectly weighted pass into Hakim Ziyech. Ajax went on to win this game and win the tie, but it was Tadic's performance that really stood out. Because even though he left the Bernabéu with 2 assists and 1 goal, he had 7 dribbles completed in that game, whilst also creating 5 goal scoring opportunities directly. 91% pass accuracy and this almost magnetic ability with the ball at his feet. I don't remember him losing the ball once in that game. He was absolutely toying with the Real Madrid defense and made them all look like they were close to retirement. Now from Dusan Tadic tearing up the Bernabéu to a guy that would go on to play at the Bernabéu, let's talk about Cristiano Ronaldo versus Arsenal back in 2008. During the 2008/9 Champions League, Ronaldo was playing out of his skin. And it just so happened that my team, Arsenal, had reached the semi-final after wins against the likes of Villarreal and AS Roma. Now going into this game, Arsenal fans knew what they were getting into because Ronaldo was not an unfamiliar face. But it was this performance against Arsenal at the Emirates that really took the cake. Now in the first leg, Arsenal kind of got off lightly with John O'Shea scoring the only goal in the game, with Man United winning 1-0 at home. But it was that second leg that Arsenal had to do something, but they were coming up against Cristiano Ronaldo. In the round just before, he scored an absolute screamer against Porto, one of the best goals in his entire career, and he was about to be unleashed against an Arsenal back line that had the likes of what? Kieran Gibbs? Come on. And immediately at the start of this game, it was the fullback that gave away the ball to Park Ji-sung, who again finished off. And after going 1-0 down early, Arsenal fans' heads had already dropped. Ronaldo was locked in this game. He had entered the doors of the zone and felt like he could do the impossible, with Robin van Persie giving away a free kick in no man's land. A free kick from 40 yards out. Nobody really thought that this would happen, but for some reason Ronaldo stepped up for a free kick from this far out. And I'm there thinking, you know what? It's fine. We're 2-0 down on aggregate. You know, he's not going to score this. We might get a goal back. We might forge a comeback. We got this. We were called the comeback kings. And then Ronaldo steps up for this free kick and blasts it from 40 yards into the back of the net. The power from the shot evading Almunia in goal. I genuinely don't know how this even happened. How did we allow this to happen? This is not FIFA, you know, back in the day where you could hold L1 and the shot bar and it would just go in from any... No, this was real life. Ronaldo just scored a 40-yard free kick against my team. What am I supposed to do? And after Ronaldo scored this free kick, it was like, you know, I'm on top of the world. I'm on top of the world, eh? Because every touch that he had in this game was impactful. He had 6 shots on target and 4 key passes in this game, with again him scoring another goal on the counter-attack. A counter-attack that absolutely devastated the Arsenal fans and me who was watching this game. Now back in December of 2013, Premier League fans probably witnessed the best individual performance in a Premier League game they had ever seen. And this wasn't just any game. This was a game between rivals. Rival birds. Yeah? The liverbird and the canary. I don't even know if the liverbird is a real bird. But 2 birds went up against each other in this clash between Liverpool and Norwich. And in this game, by the 90th minute, there would only be one man we would be talking about, Luis Suarez. Now going into this 90 minutes, Luis Suarez had scored 7 goals in his last 3 games against Norwich. But no one was expecting what was about to happen in this year's game at Anfield. And it didn't take long for the ball to get rolling, because in the first 15 minutes, Luis Suarez opened the scoring with this, a generational strike on the volley from nearly the halfway line. He scored a 40-yard half-volley lob against John Ruddy in goal and acted, you know, nonchalant, like it wasn't really one of the best goals we had seen in the history of football. Because if I scored this, even on the playground back in school, I'm just going to go up to the head teacher and I'm just going to punch him for no reason. Luis Suarez didn't even really care. He was just smiling. And this was just the first goal of 4 that he would score in the game. His second coming in the 29th minute with more of a traditional striker's goal, where the ball would come in from across and instinctually he would just finish the ball into the back of the net. Again, not with his head, but with a volley. And then the third goal came in around the 35th minute, and my oh my. This guy scored an entire catalogue of goals in one game, because he gets the ball's bouncing, he flicks it over a guy, and then just, contorts his body and volleys it again into the far right of the goal. This is no easy finish. This is a generational goal for most players. But Luis Suarez scored about 3 generational finishes in the same game. This was not normal. This goal would seal a first half hat-trick for Suarez, but it was not over yet, because Suarez wasn't done. In the 74th minute, Liverpool would get a free kick. And who do you think stepped up to take the free kick? Luis Suarez, on a hat-trick already, buries the free kick into the top corner. What is going on? This is not even real at this point. This was not football. This was a game of score hero. 2013 to 14 Suarez needs to be talked about more, because not only did he do marvelous things that season, but he was also suspended for the first part of the season, missing a bunch of games. And also, he wasn't Liverpool's penalty taker. So imagine if he was their penalty taker and he also wasn't suspended. Imagine how many goals he would have got. Now, our next 10 out of 10 performance comes from another one of the greats. We've gone from Luis Suarez. How could we get better than Luis Suarez? Ronaldo against Spain in the 2018 World Cup. Now, going into this World Cup game against Spain, rumours were flying over Ronaldo's head. Allegations of tax fraud and evasion were being thrown towards Ronaldo. But whilst all the noise was building up, Ronaldo was in a totally different zone. We were preparing to see a performance like no other. And did we get it? Kind of. Dictating the tempo, driving with the ball, taking on Nacho Fernandez, and bang, Nacho couldn't do enough. He got cheesed and Ronaldo hit him with a step over and drew a penalty. And I knew, you knew, everyone knew that Ronaldo was going to put this into the back of the net. And was I wrong? No, because Ronaldo put the ball in the back of the net, making it 1-0 in the first 3 minutes of the game. But Ronaldo only just scored a penalty. That's not the best goal. It's not really a 10 out of 10 performance, is it? And then even then, Diego Costa, a bit of proper strikesman play, holds up the ball, shimmies the defender, puts the ball in the back of the net, making it 1-1. Who's talking now? Well, no one was actually talking. Portugal's only real line of attack in this game was Ronaldo. And in the 44th minute, he was there again, with a shot with his left foot being targeted toward the goal, and David De Gea lets it slip. The ball goes into the back of the net and Ronaldo has made it 2-1. But Jib, again, that's a fluky goal. This is not really a 10 out of 10 performance. He scored a penalty and a weak left-footed shot that David De Gea, got bribed to let in. And if I'm being honest, if those were the only contributions that Ronaldo had in the game, this would not be a 10 out of 10 performance or one to even talk about. But Spain forged a comeback. It would be that man again, Diego Costa, that would make it 2-2. And then just a couple minutes later, Nacho, the guy that gave away the penalty, hits a ball on like the half volley into the corner of the goal. And this goal is still highlighted till this day, making it 3-2 in the game. And it looked like Portugal were done and dusted. This game that Ronaldo had a hand of had lost control. But in the 87th minute, Portugal were handed a token of hope. A free kick from 25 yards out, and there would be only one man that would step up to take it. Cristiano Ronaldo, 1 goal away from a hat-trick, but also 1 goal away from tying this game. And in these dying moments of the game, Ronaldo would do the unthinkable, stepping up and putting the ball into the top corner, leaving David De Gea frozen, and arguably one of his best performances for Portugal. And it wasn't just the fact that Ronaldo scored the hat-trick that even made this significant. It was the fact that Ronaldo had just, pulled back Portugal into the World Cup really. Now back in 2018, Manchester City were poised to win the title at home in a game against Manchester United. All they needed was a win, and with a squad with the likes of Kompany, David Silva, Prime Gundogan, Sterling, Leroy Sané, you were thinking that they were going to do it. Number one, win the league, but number two, humiliate their rivals. The script had already been written and the movie was underway because Manchester City in the first half were 2-0 up. Vincent Kompany scoring and Ilkay Gundogan scoring a brilliant goal. But at half time, things were about to change and it was down to one man. Paul Pogba. Let me not lie, it wasn't just Paul Pogba, it was Alexis Sanchez and it was also David De Gea in this game. Now coming out in the second half against Man City 2-0 down, there must have been a lot of thoughts going through the head of Paul Pogba. And this was mainly because he was getting heavily criticised going into this game after dyeing his hair on international duty. Pogba's hair was blue, the same colour as Manchester City, and to me and you that means nothing. But to media outlets at the time, they absolutely ridiculed Pogba for lining up to play Manchester City in one of Man United's most important games of the season with blue hair, like he was some sort of undercover agent spy in the game. No, the blue hair doesn't matter, guys. And in order to really prove them wrong, Pogba had to step up in this second half. With the help of the likes of Alexis Sanchez, Nemanja Matic, Ander Herrera, Pogba would make a late run into the box. Alexis Sanchez would loft the ball in, Ander Herrera would chest it into the path of Pogba, and Pogba would finish it off, making it 2-1 in the game, forging what looked like a comeback. But would it really be a comeback? Yes, it would, because 2 minutes later, Alexis Sanchez again puts a ball into the box and it's Paul Pogba running in from deep who heads the ball home, making it 2-2 just like that. He has just scored for Man United in a red kit whilst having blue hair. Anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
And after this moment, it was like all the adrenaline had gone to these Man United players because they were playing with a spring in their step. And it would be Chris Smalling who would head the ball home and actually win the game for Manchester United. David De Gea would also pull off some really crucial saves in the game, but in my opinion, with the storyline behind it, it was Paul Pogba that really forged this comeback. Now our next 10 out of 10 performance that we're going to be talking about in this video happened just last year in the Europa League final, a game between Bayer Leverkusen and Atalanta. Now going into this game, it was like Atalanta were not supposed to make it this far. Gasparini's men were filled with underdogs that had already toppled over the likes of Liverpool. And could they do it again against Bayer Leverkusen, who were honestly at this time an immovable object? A team that going into this match had been unbeaten in 43 games. Xabi Alonso's men were on a generational run and they were looking to make even more history by winning the Europa League too. But no, there was one man in their way. From being outcasted in the Premier League to thriving in Italy, Lookman was about to step up in this 90 minutes. And honestly, he had been stepping up all season for Atalanta, coming up with a bunch of big goals in not only the league but also the Europa League too. And after this game kicked off, it was business as usual, with his first goal in the game coming in the 12th minute with a brilliant finish. But that would not be the only good finish he would have in this game, because if I'm being honest, his second goal was outrageous. Receiving the ball on the left hand side with Xhaka in front of him, he puts the ball through his legs and what? Whips it into the top corner, shattering the hopes and dreams of every Leverkusen fan in the stadium. Lookman had just scored one of the most brilliant goals I had seen in a European final. But him and Atalanta were not done yet, because it wasn't just him that was playing well in this game. It was the likes of Scamacca that was holding the ball up for him and De Catalare on the right hand side. And in the 75th minute, it would be Scamacca that gave the ball to Lookman on that left hand side again. And even though the ball seemed to be under his feet in this moment, quickly he stepped, put it onto his left hand side and banged it into the top right hand corner of the goal. Lookman had not only dunked on Tapsoba but also Leverkusen's dreams. Lookman would be the first player since 1997 to score a hat-trick in a European final, whilst also helping Atalanta clinch their first ever European trophy themselves. Now, from a Europa League night to a Champions League one, we have to talk about one of my favourite 10 out of 10 performances that I witnessed happen against my club and devastate me as a kid. Let's talk about Lionel Messi versus Arsenal back in 2010. And with the first leg at the Emirates, it was like Arsenal actually had instilled some sort of hope, because this first leg would end in a 2-2 draw. I was gassed. It did not matter. We did not lose. 2-2. Yeah. And even though during this time away goals, did exist, we had some optimism going into this second leg against Barcelona, against Lionel Messi, with the likes of Bentner up top. And going into this second leg, it would be the GOATs going up against each other. Nicolas Bentner versus Lionel Messi. And in 18 minutes, it would be one GOAT that showed up. Nicolas Bentner would score the opener at the Camp Nou, putting Arsenal ahead in the game and filling my head with hope, dreams and happiness. But in the 21st minute in the game, we would come back to reality, because Messi would pick up the ball after a little mistake by Arsenal, and in a flash, with the quickest movement I've ever seen, 1 minute I'm looking at the ball, next minute the ball's in the top right hand corner of the goal. Lionel Messi has just made it 1-1 on the night, and we might be cooked here. And 12 minutes later, he did it again. Can somebody get this Smurf off the pitch? Eliminate him ASAP. Put 10 men around this guy. We need to contain him. He scored 2. And before I could even blink, before I could crawl to the halftime whistle, it would be Seydou Keita who headed the ball. And somehow the defense has gone missing, because this header broke the lines, sending Messi into a 1v1 situation where he was in on goal and Almunia was the only person that is, challenging him. And of course, Messi would do what Messi does, chipping the ball with ease over Almunia and making it 3-1 after we had gone 1-0 up in the same half. This is childhood trauma. And not only did he score a first half hat-trick, he would top it off in the 80-something minute, right at the end of the game, with another goal. At this point, peppering the Arsenal goal, Almunia actually pulled off a save. And then the ball goes back to Messi and he just blasts the ball through Almunia's legs. And it's 4-1. We're done. Now, this first performance that I want to talk about in this video didn't really come from a player that hadn't broken out in their team yet, because this player was already well established by the time of this fixture, with a Euros under his belt and numerous big games. But in April of 2025, when Lamine Yamal lined up against Inter Milan in the semi-final of the Champions League, everything changed, because this wasn't any player. This was a 17-year-old donning a Barcelona shirt, leading them into a semi-final fixture that the whole world was watching. In a fixture that honestly needed some parental guidance before watching. But this player wasn't just watching, he was the main star attraction. Because before this night commenced, Yamal was just a scary player for his age. But after this one night, he just became a scary player. Nobody cared about his age anymore, because him and his Barcelona side went toe-to-toe with Inter Milan in a fixture that would end 3-3. And at 17 years old, Lamine Yamal strutted in front of this Inter Milan side and said, "By the end of the game, I will own you." But this game wasn't as straightforward as the narrative would seem, with Inter Milan taking the lead early on in this game via Marcus Thuram and a brilliant flick finish into the back of the net, sending shockwaves into this Barcelona side. It had only taken 59 seconds for this Inter Milan side to penetrate a Barcelona defense that seemed so fragile, and heads were turning to these Barcelona players who could make the difference and equalize. But no one could. Dumfries would double the lead for Inter Milan, making it 2-0. With the ball being put into the box via a corner, the ball would be headed on and Dumfries would see the ball in the air and bicycle kick it into the back of the net. And this moment would honestly send shivers down the spine of Barcelona and their fans, because it seemed like all hope had been lost in 20 minutes of this game. But one player stood up and said, "No, this is not happening on my watch. and it was a 17-year-old Lamine Yamal. Just 2 minutes after that Dumfries goal, we saw a bit of individual brilliance from Lamine Yamal in a game that needed it so much. With a tangle of legs between the likes of Koundé and Yamal, Yamal would retrieve the ball before Marcus Thuram would try and muscle him off it, but no, Yamal had escaped his grasp and he's one-on-one with Mkhitaryan. In a flash, he sends this guy to the shadow realm before dipping his shoulder and moving on. And now he penetrates this Inter Milan defence before whipping a shot that hits off the post into the back of the net. And with the sound of the post echoing throughout the stadium, he had just switched the entire momentum of this game single-handedly. And that was it for me. I stood up when watching this game and said, no way did Lamine Yamal just do that to an Inter Milan side that seemed so confident. He had just switched, flipped this game and said, you know what, Barcelona, we still got a chance. And 38 minutes in, the rest of the Barcelona players would rally and score another, with Rafinha being instrumental in this, heading a ball across the box to Ferran Torres, who would put the ball into the back of the net. A striker that was actually replacing Lewandowski in this game had scored. It was this one goal by Yamal that just shifted everything in this game, and Barcelona seemed to be playing with confidence. Olmo would have an opportunity to capitalize too, but unfortunately Inter Milan would score again and it would be Denzel Dumfries. But just a few minutes later, after Barcelona had conceded again, they had scored. From the corner, a ball would be rolled into Yamal, who would dummy the ball through his legs, and Rafinha would thunderbolt this ball towards the goal. Sommer would try to stop it. It would hit the bar and go into the back of the net. The game would end 3-3, but honestly, people would go out of this game just talking about the performance that we had witnessed from Lamine Yamal. And you can say the Barcelona, team did their thing. Inter Milan did their thing. Dumfries putting in a 10 out of 10 performance. Rafinha with 2 amazing big moments. But for a 17-year-old to shift the entire tempo of a game into the favour of his team, that's when a superstar is created in my eyes. And I know Lamine Yamal had previous moments in his career, like his goal against France in the Euros, but for me this was the epitome of superstardom. Doubling down on this legacy that he's continuously creating, he turned up in a semi-final first leg and again in that second leg, and unfortunately he would go out in the second leg, but arguably that performance in the second leg was even better than the first leg performance from Lamine Yamal. But in all honesty, for me, watching this game, I just knew, Lamine Yamal is no joke no more. We can't just be labeling him as this 17-year-old that is great for his age. He became one of the best players in the world, full stop. And from a game that was changed via one action to another that involved a bunch of superstars coming into the limelight. And let me just set the stage for you. It's October 2019, the Champions League group stage, and we're witnessing a game between Liverpool and RB Salzburg. Now at the time of this game commencing, this RB Salzburg side had some hidden gems. Players that were just rumours, with no one really watching this side week in and week out to determine if they were world class or not, or they had the ability to get to that level. But in this Champions League group stage game against Liverpool, some of the players that came up against Liverpool would become household names. Now the game would start off quite simple, with Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool side absolutely dominating the first half. In just 8 minutes, Sadio Mane would score a goal, which was just a direct example of what prime Mane was. He was fierce, he was powerful, he could just drop the shoulder, leave you in the dust, play a 1-2 with Bobby Firmino, get the ball back and put it into the back of the net with ease. And then 25 minutes in, we would see another bit of beautiful play from this Liverpool side, with Andy Robertson starting a move and also finishing it. By the 35th minute, it would be 3-0 via Mo Salah. But before half time, a familiar face for Premier League fans would score for RB Salzburg, Hwang Hee-chan. He would make it 3-1 and gift the RB Salzburg players with a bit of belief going into a second half. Jesse Marsch had to speak to these players and get the most out of them. And then it would happen, because in the 55th minute, Minamino would score for RB Salzburg. And after this goal, guess who would come onto the pitch? A young Erling Haaland. Replacing Patson Daka in the game, Erling Haaland had just strolled onto this pitch as a player that football fans had only heard rumours of. He was like the Loch Ness Monster in Austria. We didn't know if this really existed, but we knew that it was a monster. And just 5 minutes later, that monster would come up to haunt these Liverpool fans. Because after a lovely bit of play, the ball would get put across the box and Erling Haaland would be there to slot it home, making it 3-3. Now this 10 out of 10 performance in this game didn't come to create one superstar, it created many. And although Mohamed Salah would score in the 68th minute to make it 4-3 and ultimately beat this RB Salzburg side, the amount of superstars that would be created from this game would be legendary. This 10 out of 10 performance was attributed to all of the players on show, the likes of Dominic Szoboszlai, Patson Daka, Erling Haaland, Hwang Hee-chan, Minamino, Mwepu who would play for Brighton. There was a bunch of stars that were put on the map after this game, giving a lot to football and Premier League clubs who eventually a lot of these players would join. Now this next 10 out of 10 performance comes in a game that honestly needs to be forgotten forever, especially for anyone that likes Barcelona in any sort of way. This game happened in August of 2020 in a game between Barcelona and Bayern Munich. And I think a lot of you know where I'm going with this. Now before this game, I didn't know who Alphonso Davies was. I had just heard that he had been, a Canadian playing at Bayern Munich who was ripping it up. And he also was a pace abuser. But after this game and this tie with Barcelona in the Champions League, I knew who Alphonso Davies was, and the entire world did. Because this Canadian left back playing for Bayern Munich exploded into prominence in a game against Barcelona. A game that saw Bayern Munich win 8-2. And in that match there would be a specific moment that would continuously be replayed after the game, where a 19-year-old Alphonso Davies would pick the ball up, near the halfway line, getting past the likes of Messi and Arturo Vidal. And then he would face off against Semedo and absolutely rip him to shreds. He took Semedo to school with a drop of the shoulder and a change of pace, exploding past him and towards the byline before, you're thinking release the ball, release the ball. He holds onto it to the perfect moment before giving a ball into the path of Kimmich, who slots it home. After this moment, Kimmich would actually come out and say he felt embarrassed to score the goal because Alphonso Davies had made the entire thing. That's how powerful this goal was. He had just, driven 50 yards up the pitch with the ball, did the entire bit of hard work, put it across the box, and it was in the back of the net. This must have happened in slow motion for Alphonso Davies, but it actually happened in a flash, with these Barcelona players honestly looking bamboozled in this moment. Like the acceleration of Alphonso Davies honestly deleted Semedo out of existence. I never heard from him after this game until he moved to Wolves. And what also stood out to me during this moment and seeing this happen was that, he didn't once think, let me turn back and recycle the play. Nah. He said, I'm risking it all. It does not matter. And of course that 8-2 result would go down in history, but I would take from that game that a star had just been made. Now this next performance is honestly the peak of them all. Mbappé in the 2018 World Cup versus Argentina. But before I talk about this game, please remember to like the video. I forget to ask all the time, and subscribe to the channel. Now when you think of the name Kylian Mbappé and a game that created a superstar, some people won't even think of this performance that he had against Argentina in World Cup 2018. And that's because Kylian Mbappé from the age of 17 was balling out at Monaco. He had a bunch of big games in Monaco's run in the Champions League during his time there, including a performance that saw him score multiple goals against Manchester City. But when it comes to putting your name up there as one of the greatest, the World Cup is the place to do so. And in this game, Kylian Mbappé would do exactly that. He would make it known that he was going to be the best player in the world one day. It was Kylian Mbappé on one side, spearheading a French team that was the youngest on average in the tournament, going toe-to-toe against Lionel Messi and his Argentinian soldiers that were actually the oldest average squad in the World Cup. And just 17 days after turning 19, Kylian Mbappé would take sword and go straight for the jugular, delivering one of the most legendary World Cup performances that we've seen in recent times. And just 12 minutes into this game, Mbappé was puffing out his chest and breaking lines, getting in behind this Argentinian defense before drawing a foul inside the box, winning a penalty that Antoine Griezmann would slot into the back of the net. 1-0. Like, he would just breeze past these Argentinian defenders to the point where they were pulling him back at every opportunity, and eventually it would pay off. Just 12 minutes in, France go 1-0 up. But Argentina would hit back and it would be the left foot of Angel Di Maria that shot the ball in from like 30 yards out. Time and time again, this guy would come up clutch for Argentina, and again, he would do it. And it wasn't over yet because Argentina would score again, with Messi kind of taking a swing at it on goal, but the ball would be, ricocheted in and it wouldn't get called for offside. It's 2-1 now and France are on the back foot. But 57 minutes in, Theo Hernandez is breezing down that left hand side before cutting the ball across the box, and it goes all the way to the other fullback, Pavard, who scores one of the best goals in this entire World Cup. The ball flies into the top corner, but it's only 2-2. And now the fate lies in the hands or the feet of Kylian Mbappé. And this is where you separate the men from the lions. Yeah? The times where your team needs you the most, who's going to be that player that makes the difference? That's what created the superstar in my eyes. Because in just 7 minutes, Kylian Mbappé would take his turn. Theo Hernandez would put the ball into the box again. Blaise Matuidi wouldn't be able to control it. It would, hit the back of Giroud before Kylian Mbappé took one touch, put it into a bit of space, and bang, the ball is in the back of the net and France are going completely wild. With one touch, Kylian Mbappé has just taken out 3 Argentinian defenders. With his left foot, he's got onto it with that burst of speed and finished it into the back of the net, and it's 3-2. Slide finish, arms folded, the 19-year-old has made it 3-2 in a World Cup tie against Argentina. But no, he's not done yet, because in the 68th minute, he would do it again. A bit of transitional football would commence with Blaise Matuidi feeding the ball into Giroud. Giroud would see the run of Kylian Mbappé, slide it into him. He's been steaming down the right hand side this entire time, runs onto the ball, slots it into the back of the net, into the bottom corner. Kylian Mbappé has just scored twice against Argentina and has had 3 goal contributions in this game as a 19-year-old, and he has just labelled himself as the best player in the world right now. At 19 years of age, he's just dominated in clinical fashion an Argentinian side in the round of 16 of a World Cup. And this performance would drive forward this France team to eventually win the World Cup with the likes of Mbappé in the squad, but the brilliance of a Kante, a brilliance of Pogba. This entire side was just vibes, and Kylian Mbappé in this game specifically, this round of 16 tie, just put his name up there as one of the greats in football, and we knew that this was the real deal.